Welcome back, folks, to the Lighthead Online Video Show. Yes, I'm wearing the same shirt as the last one. That's because we record them all at once. This episode of the show is brought to you by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com. Greggy?
Check them out. Today, what I wanted to talk about is, in addition to doing this online video show, you and I are both starting to write a few articles here and there.
Yeah.
And I'm working on my next one that might come out around the time that this comes out. So it's kind of going to be diving a little more into it. And it's come from a lot of our conversations that we've had with our podcast guests. And, I might title it, I got to get your approval. But with a phrase you've said a number of times on our show, and I want to dive into a little bit, is the fact that there's a vacuum of leadership in the lighting industry. So you've titled that. Why don't you give us your opinion on why the vacuum of leadership, and then I'll get more into what I was going to talk about.
So you want to steal my idea and write an article?
No, I want to put it in the air, and I'm going to quote you, and it's going to be, make sure it's known that you said it first. So,
Well, I think what's happened in the lighting business is that pre LED, we had clear corporate leaders. We had the distribution channel was already being disrupted, though. I'll say that the distribution channel was already on the rocks, and a lot of pressure coming down on it from a lot of the T8 and T5 high bay stuff was also that was a huge disruption, actually. But the LED is just so LED is just so disruptive to a traditional industry that it's incredible. So what happened was probably about 2009, 10, 2008, something like that. You started to see all these other players entering the business and taking, willing to do or say anything for market share and for new business. So, ridiculous claims about life and, lawsuit. There was actually lawsuits. And I wrote a letter to The Economist magazine about this that was published, I think, in May 2010. I wrote a letter, and The Economist magazine is a pretty big deal. I don't know, not for Americans, but for the rest of the world. It's kind of like getting a letter published in Bloomberg Business or something like that, right? So it's a magazine that matters, or a newspaper that matters. Anyway, and I was talking about LEDs and this sort of stuff to them. And they had their LED fog glasses on. Oh, this is going to be amazing. They never burn out and all this kind of stuff. And then what happened was people that had a long and tenured life in lighting, whether you were a manufacturer, whether you were a distributor, whatever role you played, if you'd been in lighting for a long time, you were very suspicious of LED when it first came out. It started in exit signs, right? You started putting them in exit signs. You started, weird applications. You'd put LED in, right? And then, when it started to come really hard, all of us were like, oh, I don't know. What is this all about? But then all of a sudden we're getting surrounded by all these other competitors that are only LED. Okay? And this put a lot of pressure on companies with reputations, on companies with huge investments in infrastructure, with companies with millions and millions of dollars in stock of things like pulse start metal halide, VHO fluorescence, all sorts of different things. So there's this pressure coming in. And I lost tons of customers and tons of deals because I wasn't willing to make warranty claims. I wasn't willing to sell technology I didn't believe in. I had guys running around Toronto selling $40 LED tubes with the diodes open and basically 40 flashlights, and there's a lot of pressure. So what ended up happening was Philips, I think, went on a buying spree and bought half the lighting business. That was their response. I think Sylvania was the first one to get rid of their lighting business and call it Ledvance. And then, of course, Philips followed with Signify, and now GE, current by GE, has kind of pulled back. And then we did some podcasts with GE where they flat out wouldn't make Type B LED tubes simply because they weren't sure. And they ended up being right. And even though they were right, it cost them a fortune, Greg. It cost them a fortune to make that decision. Like, that's where sticking to your principles is like, causes basically your business to be sold. That's what happened. And combined with the pressure just from the technology and from the new entrants. I mean, remember when LG, Samsung, all those Asian semiconductor companies entered lighting? Like, that was very intimidating, dude. You had people writing the death of the lighting business, and the Asian semiconductor companies are going to take it over, and they're all gone now, but maybe they aren't. I don't know if they make a component. I think Samsung makes LED chips or whatever, maybe, I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the customer doesn't see Samsung or LG as household brands in the lighting business today. So you have that happening at the same time. Then you have utility rebate programs come in. And the utility rebate programs, you know what? We don't know what to do. Should we ask the IES? No, they got their heads in the sand like everybody else in the lighting business. Right? They're like the distributors, and they're like the big three and the other traditional manufacturers. They all got their heads in sand in denial of this. They don't know what to do. Well, who are we going to turn to? Because we, like as Jim Benya says, we don't have any lighting experts on our staff. So then what happens? They start to turn to accreditation agencies who start throwing up standards about what the product should be like, and the only metric they're looking for is lumens per watt, Greg. Right? That's the only.
Yep.
No, but back in the past, like in 2000, whatever, they wanted lumens per watt. That's all. That's what they wanted. That you had to meet the lumens per watt. You met the lumens per watt. Boom. So all of a sudden, an accreditation agency becomes the number one brand in the lighting business. Right? So now, as long as you have that DLC logo on your box, it doesn't matter what the name of your company is anymore. Further pressure on the leaders in the industry. So now the end user has no idea if the IES is the Illuminating Engineering Society or the Association of Indigenous People or whatever. I mean, who knows what the IES is to them? All they know is that in order to get a rebate, you need to say DLC, right? So now you have further pressure on the leaders in the lighting business to the point where they all got out of it, right? So now you have no corporate leadership in the lighting business. None. And when I talk about corporate leadership, I'm talking about companies with deep roots in quality lighting, that have a distribution network, that have people that believe in them, that are selling to end users. Like, I mean, there was a time, if you wanted to sell light bulbs to the big towers in downtown Toronto, and believe me, there's a lot of them. Toronto is a big city. If you wanted to sell on those towers, man, no one ever got fired for buying GE. No one ever got in trouble for buying Philips. No one ever got in trouble for buying Sylvania. They point at the invoice and say, look, boss, I bought Sylvania, or I bought GE. What do you want from me? I bought the name brand. I got a good price. But if you brought one of those, so you couldn't get into those buildings unless you remember this too, because you didn't have an account with any of those guys either. And so it's like, if you didn't have one of those guys, now, dude, that doesn't matter, worth nothing. Nobody cares about those companies anymore. If you go down to some maintenance guy at the First Canadian Place or the Scotia Plaza and you say, what brand of lighting matters? He's going to say what? DLC. That's what matters.
Get the rebate. Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah. And so that's what, that's the starting point of it, is that it's basically open. It's up for grabs right now. DLC might be the leader as of now, but are they going to be long-term? We don't know. So what the purpose of this is to say is who makes up the lighting industry today? And I've got my ideas, and that's what I want to share with
the
you.
The listeners of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast and the Lighthead online video show. That's who, brother.
And that's true. But, what categories do they fall under? And I kind of changed terminology up to what makes sense to me. I like to simplify it a little bit. And in all of our talks, I think I've summed it up. But you tell me if I'm wrong. I think there are 4 groups in the lighting industry. All right. There's the thinkers. There's the makers, there's the doers, and there's the users. And I think you know what each one of those are, but I'm going to dive into what I think they are, and you chime in too. So first, you start with the thinkers. Thinkers are the people that are associations or accreditation bodies or lighting designers. A lot of times, people that don't actually see the end user. A lot of times, a lot of the people that are on our show,
Thought leaders.
thought leaders, and they've always been around, but it seems like we have them more than ever now.
Oh,
We
there's
have
more
more
of them than ever.
PhDs. Yeah, how many PhDs are in lighting? They're all over the place,
But
and they're thinking about it.
yeah, they're thinking about it, right? But the problem is
Hmm.
that here's the problem with the thinkers. Okay?
Yeah.
And this is what we do on our show is so the thinkers, they're talking about the possibilities. But those and then the makers are talking about making the possibilities. And then what happens is that to the users and the doers, that translates into the thinkers say, you know what? I wonder if we can really help human health outcomes. Let's have a symposium. Let's have a symposium. We're going to bring all the people, and they're all going to come down to this hotel, and they're all going to be here, and we're all going to talk about it. And then word gets out, right? Word gets out on the street, and now it's not ready. But the thinkers are thinking about it, and they're talking about it. And then you have words like human-centric lighting, which needs to die, by the way, die. You have words like health effects of lighting, right? So, yeah, there you go, the thinkers.
So the thinkers, they're an important group. We need them. We need smart people in lighting
Of course.
to advance. So,
but the
it's an
problem
important
is
group,
you're combining it right now. So if the thinkers were around in the 80s, no one would know what the hell they're thinking about.
Right. That's true.
Right? Nobody would go
now
and nobody would report on some stupid lighting dork conference. Like, it's not like there's going to be an article in the New York Times about it.
Right.
But we communicate so quickly that what the thinkers say, people want it quicker than the thinkers can deliver it.
Right. And then that brings kind of the next one is the makers. The makers can be manufacturers. They can be, not always necessarily that, but primarily that people that are making the product and bringing it over. But the key word on that, maker, might not be the right term because a lot of them actually don't make anything. They subcontract out all of their labor and their manufacturing to make it. They used to make it. Now they don't, but I'm going to call them that just because that's what I see them as, is the people that make the product that we sell.
If you're interested in that, there's another article coming out called The China Question Part 2.
Yeah.
That might help you a little bit with that one too. But
definitely.
Yeah, I wonder who wrote that one.
Nicely. That was you. That's going to be a good one. So the makers, and the next one I see as the doers. The doers are the distributors, the people taking what the thinkers and makers are providing and then implementing it in the field. That can be contractors or distributors or a combination of both, as a lot of people are now. And really getting the product out there in the marketplace being used. They're the people that are practical about it, because who do they have to report to? People using the system, people paying for the system, the end users. And I think that's the part that was missed in a lot of this LED revolution was, what do the users want? And I don't think a lot of the leaders in the industry actually listened to the users. The thinkers said, oh, let's do this. And the makers did their thing. And then the doers they sorted it out. And we're still doing that. We're still out there sorting out the mess and then getting it to the end user and saying, here's what actually makes sense to do now. If they ask you about all that other stuff, you just we have to filter that out. So, I know I'm speaking strongly as a doer because that's what I feel you and I are. And we kind of see it from all avenues, but I think that's what it comes down to is a leader in lighting today needs to understand those four groups and really needs to take into account all four of their opinions in order to step up.
Well, I think what we do is we connect the doers to the thinkers, and we filter out the garbage.
Yeah.
Like
that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's like why this show is popular, the Light Ted Online Video Show and the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast, is because we are that. We are the people, the two guys, that have the personalities, the experience, and the, what's that word? The chutzpah, or whatever it is, to talk about this stuff and put it on the internet. And the reality is that the leaders might be talking to each other right now, because the reality of the situation in the lighting business is that the thinkers are separated from the users by like 70,000 miles. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no idea what's happening on the front lines, specifically in the retrofit market, which is the biggest market.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know about, or what the market that matters most, because there's no lighting designers there. There's lighting designers in all these other areas, like the new construction, you build a new building, you're going to have a lighting designer for sure. That has that knowledge. They're going to pay somebody, the architect's going to pay someone, write a big check to a lighting designer for sure. But in the retrofit market, right, and a perfect example of this is the flicker problem. The flicker problem is when the thinkers come up with something. Oh, look, we can slam, we have lumens per watt. We can slam it in a T8 tube, and look at that. Okay, and we're going to pump it out there. And then next thing you know, and then an accreditation agent comes along and says it's about lumens per watt, right? And then the makers make it. That's what it's about, lumens per watt.
Yep.
Right? And then the doers are like, slam them in, smash in those LED tubes. Come on, folks, let's go. No more ballasts. No more ballasts. Just smash them in. So, whoa, change the socket. Change out those sockets. Get those sockets out. Double-ended. Don't change the sockets. Don't change the sockets. Just get her done. Go, 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 go. Get that skid of light bulb. Boom, boom, boom. Like, just crank them out. Show me the money. Woo! Get them the rebate. Boom, 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 boom. Right? And then all of a sudden it's like, shit, these things flicker like crazy. Huh? What? Well, I'm doer number X. Huh? What's this flicker stuff? Huh? What? No one ever told me about any flicker. And you're standing in front of the customer. And the customer's looking at us saying, you didn't tell me about this flicker, son. I'm like, I didn't know anything about any flicker until I got I got out of a BlackBerry that had a camera on it, and I could put it up there and I could, oh my goodness, this thing's flickering. Right? Next thing you know, you've sold what? 75 million of these things?
They're everywhere. Yeah. And that's exactly the problem in lighting today. And then
70, like, what is it? What is it? Is it 250 million of these things out there? What is it? There's got to be a number somewhere. Someone's got to have a number.
There's a number. Big number.
It's a huge number. A huge number, dude. Like,
it's billion, for sockets of T8s. Yeah.
Like, dude, there is tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of oscillating bypass LED tubes deployed right now that are hurting people.
Yeah, you're talking installed, because there are over 1 billion sockets. So yeah, I would say, we think it's 30% of the market is LED, and of that maybe another, probably over half is LED tubes potentially. So
I don't know, whatever it is, it's a monster.
Yeah, big.
It's a monster, and maybe it's recall time.
What are we doing recall time?
Did I say recall?
Start over.
I can't say it because the lights are flickering in here. I can't think. Like, come on, dude. I mean, this is what happens with modern media, with digital media, with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. This is why we put it out, because thinkers and makers, we stand in front of the customers, and honestly, I thank God that literally thank God that the Save on Energy program in Ontario said no bypass tubes. And I'm like, whew, I missed that one, because I was all over bypass. I wanted to get rid of those ballasts so bad, dude. And I was like, oh, you guys are stupid. What kind of a stupid play is this? What are you talking about? Right? But now it's like, whoa, that was a close one for Ontario, man. That was a close one. We almost had blinking lights everywhere. LED torture, #LED torture. So, and look, there's a huge percent of the population that causes problems for. Now, is it 2% or 3%? I don't know. Migraines, you're talking.
It's enough.
Yeah, it's enough, dude. It's a big problem, and maybe it's recall time. And I don't know. There, I said it. I've been holding that in for a long time.
Time to recall and find out who the real leader in lighting is going to be. It's up for grabs right now.
It's up for grabs.
And I think that's what we're looking at.
You know what? Can you Can you throw one more thing at me?
Sure.
What do the users think of all this stuff?
Well, the users are, I think the ones that have done it, that early adopters are pissed off. I think a lot of them are starting to find problems. Like you brought up an example in a different podcast of a fixture that burned out after 5 years and 3 months. That would piss that would piss me off if I'm like, yeah, you sold me on LED and now I have to replace the whole thing for sure. So I think that's the action, and then the excitement I think from the users is somewhat gone in LED or is shrinking. The initial excitement was there. We all rode it for a long time. Now it's starting to slow down, and people are like, okay, wait, what? My LEDs are burning out. I put in LEDs, they burned out. The label said they're going to be 27 years. Things like that. And I think that's what's starting to happen with the users.
There's
We
a
gotta
reason. There's a reason why the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast has between 4 and 6,000 listens per episode. Thank you for listening to the Lighthead online video show. This show is sponsored by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com.